Number two, financing cost, right? So how do you kind of evaluate whether one, generally it's financing cost. So every project is going to make a big effort. They're going to spend a lot of time and effort to try to secure the lowest cost financing. So that means going to banks, to private lenders, and they're going to try and borrow money, raise money, and obviously they're going to try and raise it at as low a rate of cost or interest rate as possible. And so a very good kind of objective way, almost like an SAT score in college admission, is just, okay, these 5 projects all went out to get a loan from a bank, a professional lender. What interest rate are these 5 projects paying, right? And the higher the rate, the more risk that bank or that lender has assigned to that project, right? Very objective, and it's a very specific number, right? It's just easy to compare. One project's interest rate is going to be 15%, another one's going to be 11, another one's going to be 8, and it's just very simple. You compare the rates, and that is a very easy way to just objectively determine which project has higher risk and will allow you to compare risk across projects. So that's two, financing cost.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of investors, when they're kind of first going out into the EB-5 world and looking at different projects, it can be very daunting, especially when you don't have a background in finance or looking at real estate deals to see a capital stack and really understand what's going on. So I think the first thing that every investor should keep in mind is, look, in America, there's a pretty clear delineation between debt and equity. If you're going into a project on the debt side, you're always going to be a little bit safer because debt comes with collateral and it gets paid out first. So in any project that you're going into, if you're going to be on the loan side, we'll talk about what that means. You're going to be a little bit safer or more secure because you're going to get paid out first before any of the equity pieces get paid out. So that's one thing that a lot of investors don't, when they're first looking at capital stacks, understand, and they kind of put equity and loan side to side. They both have their pros and cons, but if you're looking for safety of capital and you really want to, make sure that your principal is as secure as possible, you're going to be looking usually on a debt-based project or a debt-based EB-5 investment. Most capital stacks will be broken up into multiple pieces, right? So we've already delineated between loans and equity, right? And we see that in this capital stack right here. So let's just take a very easy example of $100 million project. Let's say the project goes out and says, okay, we're going to put in about 15% of our own equity, and they've got, some other investors that they're getting preferred equity from. So they put in $25 million through equity that they've raised themselves. Where are they going to get the rest of the money, right? So they go out and they ask a bank, and the bank says, hey, you know what? This project looks great, but we really only feel comfortable giving you about $50 million, right? That becomes what is commonly referred to as a senior loan. This is going to be the most senior debt on the deal. This is the money that gets paid back first. In the event that something goes wrong in the project and they default on this loan, that bank is going to be able to go in, get their money out first before anybody, including the developer themselves, would get paid. So this is typically the safest part of the capital stack. It sits at the very top, and it's always going to be the lowest cost of capital, because lower the risk, the lower the reward as well, right? Then we come to the mezzanine loan. And so now this developer's got 25 million, in this example, it's got $25 million of their own money. They've got $50 million in the bank. They're still short another 25 million. So they go out and they find this debt elsewhere, and maybe from another bank. And this bank says, sure, we'll give you this 25 million. We believe in this project, but we're definitely taking more of a risk, right? We're sitting beneath the senior loan. Something goes wrong, that bank's going to get their money back, but we're definitely going to be kind of fighting an uphill battle to be able to get our money. So we're going to charge a much higher interest rate because higher risk, higher reward for us, right? We're willing to underwrite this deal, but we want something more out of it because we're taking a much higher risk. So that mezzanine loan is typically going to be at a much higher percentage than the senior loan, right? And so when you're looking at where the EB-5 money fits into a deal like this, you really want to see what it's replacing, right? Ultimately, if you're replacing a mezzanine loan that was originally charging 15%, right, you're looking at a 15% kind of risk relative to what the senior loan may have been charging, which might have been like 8 or 9%, right? So that's one easy way to kind of just determine, okay, if the EB-5 money is coming in and replacing senior debt, I feel a lot better about where my money is going in because the first bank in this example has already underwritten this and felt safe about that amount of financing, right? But if I'm coming in and replacing mezzanine debt, I'm already sitting behind the senior loan, and now I'm basically getting a much smaller return and a much higher risk than the senior loan than I would have if I had replaced the senior loan. So this is an easy way to kind of determine one, what kind of risk am I taking when depending on where I'm going into the capital stack, and then as you're comparing different projects, looking at their various capital stacks and comparing them and seeing if there was no EB-5 money in the deal, what each tranche or what each level of this capital stack was charging, you can compare those and easily assess the risk in a project.
Yep, that's great on that. And I would say that one thing to keep in mind is there are some people that try and game this, that try and show things like an inflated equity number by marking up land by 500%. It's things like that where they show different types of things. Other ones will, I've seen people call debt senior, and today it might be senior, but in the loan terms, there's tons of gotchas where if certain metrics aren't hit with the amount of EB-5, that money actually becomes subordinated. And another senior can come ahead of it. So really it's mezzanine debt, even though technically today it's senior. Versus a lot of the way that we structure, we prefer transparency, where one example that we have is the Keystone project. Currently, our debt is in the mezzanine position, but there's already repayment methods through condo sales to take out the senior, and our money will effectively become senior at the closing of condos that are already sold. So we're going the opposite way. We're going to tell you transparently, today this is subordinated debt, but all of the seniors covered and it becomes senior, and we put it out there versus the other approach of just saying, oh, this is senior. Without any of the caveats of the other financing that can come in. So I would say it's never quite as simple as looking at a chart like this and trusting everything on face value. I wish it was. Unfortunately, you do really need to dig in and do your homework and see, is that equity real? Is it cash? Is it inflated land value? Are you actually senior, or are there other things that can come ahead of you and make you subordinated? And what are those triggers? So I would say always do your diligence on the project and understand what's going on in the capital stack. That's one of the hardest things to figure out without being a finance professional, and one of the places where we've seen people play games. So I would say that is just one thing to dig into.
Yep. Yeah, definitely agree with that. And yeah, I think we have projects that have offerings at kind of different levels. It's not to say that there's only one way to structure an EB-5 project or only one piece of this capital stack that you always want to replace. That's definitely not what we're saying. But yeah, looking at capital stacks and kind of going through the documents and looking for those gotchas that Mike mentioned is a really, really good way to establish one, relative risk when looking at different projects, comparing them to one another, and then two, just transparency, right? Where is this sitting in the capital stack, and is there language in the documents that's actually hiding where it could be in the future, or what's really going on kind of underneath the surface?
Yep, and if as you review, these different projects that are out there, like if you're not sure of something or if you have questions, like EB-5 is a small space. We're pretty familiar with a lot of the other projects that are available, and we're happy to help, answer questions and kind of help compare and contrast. We've looked at hundreds of documents over the years, and so pretty easy for us to, very quickly figure out, where problems can lie.